Welcome all to my paranormal closet, where the stories and magic take place. Today's guest is a real-life psychic detective who turned her own life from crime victim to crime solver. She is also able to communicate with pets and wildlife. Join me in welcoming the psychic Nancy Orlan Weber.
Oh,
Welcome.
thank you. Hello, Eleanor, and thank you.
Am I excited to you today?
Well, I'm hoping we can help others, right?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, especially if they're looking for somebody that does what you do.
Well, I think it has practical applications for every day also,
Sure,
right?
sure. Well, let's start with your crime cases. I'm sure it can be a risk to the safety of yourself and your family and those involved in the case. How many cases would you say you've worked on and or solved in your many years of working with the police?
I know I was involved in finding parts for 13 cases that led to life in prison for two serial killers and
No
11
kidding.
murderers and an rapist of 18 women. The last one almost died. And some federal ones I'm not allowed to talk about. And I've worked on probably a couple of hundred cases in 40 years, but I'm not always told the answers.
Mm,
The result, in fact, I got one from LinkedIn, a detective I have worked with. I don't know. I just give it and I'm done unless I know them well and it's not far away. And so this one was another state. And he was just sharing, oh, I found you, da, 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 and thank you for helping. It worked. And that's how sometimes I find out what I
that's
did.
how you find out.
Yeah, that's okay. It's the ones that were local in the first 10 years. And because it was all adjudicated, you mentioned being safe. Um, my town had me take off my number off my door, number off the mailbox. They kept me private for caution. And so the cases, for instance, in my book, are Life of a Psychic Detective are only adjudicated cases, fully adjudicated old cases. I never discuss ongoing. Everything is confidential.
As it should be.
Yeah. And besides, I don't want a court case ruined because a psychic helped,
Sure.
right?
Have you ever been afraid of being accused of the crime yourself?
Nope.
No,
Never.
that's
No. Never even thought about that.
well, that's good.
Yeah. I think that belief is mandatory to stay nice and strong in it. And I never worried about that.
That's
I
good.
was also passed around by lead detectives in cases, chief of detectives, state troopers, uh, and commissioners. So when you get that kind of referral, it's a different world.
I think it's great that they're receptive to it
Very,
because you
very.
would think that they may not be.
No, matter of fact, they asked for me. I never even, uh-uh. No. I love Nancy Drew and I love solving mysteries, but I was full time since 1975, and they knocked on my door in 1980 or earlier, actually, end of 1979, probably September, October. I had just moved to New Jersey, Bud Lake, and they found me bringing my son to karate school. So before that, I was still so busy as a psychic and medium and all the rest that I was full time and a half and raising my two kids. So it was interesting, to say the least, to be pulled in and suddenly one day after I worked on a case, a couple of them successfully right away. The first one I pointed to, uh, got the indictment, got the confession, all done. And that was weird for me because I had never done this before.
Hmm.
And I wasn't looking to do any more than that.
When did you realize that you had this gift? You tell how it all began for you way back when?
You mean the gift of finding what happens
Being a
in a.
being a psychic.
Oh, my whole life. I never called it that. You don't think anything's different, right?
You think you're just like everybody else.
Well, you assume everybody can do the same thing, or you
Mhm.
learn that you skip rope better than somebody else, and they skip rope better than you. So it's no different when you know some things, and sure, other people know some things. You just don't know they don't know that.
When did you realize that you were different?
I don't know that consciously, but early in life, I had a spirit by my side in my crib. And he would point out and tell me things, and I would repeat them. They would be true. And my mother would say, "Shut up and go to your room." So, so I, I knew that that was not accepted, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know why because I really liked the guy who taught me.
I'll
So I
bet.
never thought it was that experience, just that she was mad over something.
Mm-hmm.
What it was, I had no clue, and I never even at two, I didn't care, and I didn't think about it. I went back to play. It was gradual when I was 6 and knew somebody something happened to, and when I was 13 and knew my friend down the street in Brooklyn was dying, and nobody else knew it. So, and I knew when he would die a year
Oh,
later. And it was the response my mother gave me that said, "This is not the usual." But I didn't think of anything like that. I didn't think I caused anything. I got very curious early on. At age 10, I wrote a thesis on the history of the insane asylum. I
hmm.
wanted to understand psychology and psychiatry and abnormal psych early on. I wanted to know why people were burned at the stake for knowing things. Uh, I was curious, but I wasn't upset or fearful or concerned. I was curious, inquisitive.
Did you find that it was just you, or were there other people in your family that were gifted in the same way?
So my mother's story was very simple. She woke up in the middle of the night in Brooklyn. Her mother and stepfather lived in Laconia, New Hampshire, and the rest of the family did too, the maternal side. And she called her aunt because her mother didn't have a phone, and she said, "Becky and Joe just went over a cliff in a car," and told her what
Oh,
mountain. And her aunt said, "Millie, where are you?" And she said, "Well, I'm in bed." And she said, "Go back to sleep. You're dreaming." She said, "No, I'm not. And get the police. I'm telling you." Well, lights were out by 9 o'clock on their part. They never drove late or whatever. And so the aunt got dressed, went to their home, and saw the car was gone at 11 o'clock or 1 a.m. in the morning. So called the police. And yes, they had gone over a mountain and they rescued them. My mother hated it. Not that she hated her mother, she was terrified after that of ever knowing anything.
mm.
And she was a manicurist at some point or studying hair or whatever. And she said, "Do you know I didn't even get a quarter tip? This woman gave me predictions that all came true." She
Wow.
hated she hated it.
Huh.
So yeah,
See, I had
she was that way.
a
Yeah.
circumstance when I was a kid. I used to be able to predict things from dreams, and they were very simple to start. But then I had a terrible night where I dreamed of my godparents' deaths. And of course, I woke up as if it was a nightmare and told my mom. She
Mm.
said, "Don't worry about it. It's just a nightmare." And then when it came true, it freaked me out and I shut down.
How old were you?
I believe I was like 11 or 12 at the time.
And you had tarot cards.
No,
Oh,
no, nothing like that.
how
I
did
didn't learn
you
about tarot cards until later in life,
how did you get it? Do you
in
remember?
dreams, in my sleep. I would wake up. It was like I would watched a full-blown movie of what happened.
Mm.
And after
So,
that incident, I shut down. Nothing
oh,
ever came to me again until the day of my father's death.
Hmm.
And then he came to me wake dream. I was sitting in traffic, in bumper to bumper traffic on the George Washington Bridge when he came to me and let me know that he was gone.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of when it was an awakening for me when I realized what's going on here that I really need to know about. So I know I'm sure you've heard this from people, but I feel like I have purpose and to do something that I haven't quite grasped yet. And I think I may know it, but I'm not 100% sure. And so I've been trying to figure it out ever since.
I don't think it's figurable.
No, huh?
Well, that's the left hemisphere only. I am a prover out. That's not English, I know, but I prove out everything I can do. So when I was 31, um, my son was about, I don't know, 3 months old, 4 months old. I decided things weren't working for me and physically. I was born with a genetic defect. So I was struggling with that at that point again, and I hadn't for a long time. Well, I made a decision to start deep breathing and then got curious about when people say you were on my mind, is that a literal thing or figurative? So I got journals and I made up stuff. I wrote everything. If you were on my mind in a mental conversation with you, I wrote it down. I wrote the date. And then when I could afford the phone call, I would call and say, and they'd go, how did you know? And I went, very interesting. I took
Something
10
here.
objects, right? Took 10 objects around the rooms that were gifted to the family, whether gifted to me or my kids. And I sat down with everything one at a time. I made it all up. I didn't know anybody did anything. I didn't care. I understood that I had a gift through nursing proved it. The doctors even asked me to diagnose. And how did I know it? And I said, you can't see it. I thought everybody could see,
Oh
but
my.
I had no clue. No, I mean, but running an acute psych unit opened every door in my life.
Mm.
I owe everything to everybody there, both the acute psychotics and the staff. The health and hospital offered me the top research post in psychiatry in the state. I turned it down and opened up my practice.
Mm.
I was able to read what was behind the hallucinations. I was able to read behind the murderous intent. And so I was doing soul readings, and every psychiatrist there wanted me to do the work. They loved it, and they told me so. And so that changed my whole way of looking at the lightning bolt that just comes through, and you don't know how it comes, and you don't know what it's about. You just
Mm-hmm.
know it's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And whether it's dreams or day, it didn't matter. But I had no control over it except in nursing. And that's when I put together the idea that I needed focus. I needed pinpointed focus in order to know what it's all about at all. I mean, I don't know that we'll ever know what it's all about with us. But so I kept journals. I wrote everything down. I had a teacher of my daughter ask me about something and how did I ever remarry? And I was annoyed at myself for being trite about it to her. I left and I had this whole mental conversation with her in my head. I wrote it all down and I called her that night after my kids were in bed and it was all true. And I thought, this is really interesting.
Sure.
And so people started showing up in my life and my title insurance agent of all people turned out to be an astrologer with the top astrologers in the nation. And he brought me
Uh-huh.
them, and he brought me his cousins, and he brought me everybody at night after the kids were in bed. And he'd say, just tell them whatever you see. And so I did. And I got into trance mediumship through that. But everything was proven out, except who that man in my life was from the crib to the trance mediumship. I still get curious about that, but that's something I'm still looking at. I think
Might
it's
be your
all,
guardian angel. You mean the one who
well,
taught you to
he
begin?
has a name, and but I'm not ready to share that with the world yet in
Mm-hmm.
that way because I study enough psychology to know egos get involved in everything. And I, when I first found out his name and I looked it up and I went, uh-uh, no, you're a fragment of my soul. You're a fragment of my personality. You're something, but you are not that. And so in trance, he would say, no, if anything, you're a fragment of mine. So I argued with whatever it was. And
Hmm.
that's there. I don't know that there ever are on earth all the answers. I know that there's some ideas and some answers about focus and frequency and working on removing any fears. And I don't mean the healthy fear of don't walk in front of a car kind of
Hmm.
fear, but the fears that come in our minds that have nothing to do with the reality of the moment. They interfere. So I've always worked on that. And
Yeah,
I've
because you don't
always,
want them getting in the way of accomplishing that final goal.
right. That's something that I believe very strongly. Uh, you can change any program inside.
I
And
do
so,
believe that too.
yeah,
We are in control. We are able to do that.
our souls are. Right,
Yes.
right. The mind is just an instrument. It's part of the brain, part of the body, part of the nervous system. And emotions are, they're not our rulers. We can control them. And I love learning that.
My husband is the person who believes that his glass is half empty and
Say
mine
that
is
again.
always half full.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
My husband's glass is always half empty
Oh, really?
and mine is
Huh.
always half full. So
Huh.
recently, during a personal struggle, he was really making him sick over it.
Mm.
And I was telling him, you are in control.
Yeah.
You can't look at it as if your glass is half. You have to look at it as half full. And that this is a good thing that's going to come to you sooner than you expect it to. Like, you don't get in that headspace where you make yourself sick, because he was making himself sick, you know? And I really
Sure.
feel like we have the ability to turn it around for ourselves, you know?
Hmm. I think that sometimes practical understanding can help. So if he knows that the chemistry of the glass half full causes a change in the brain and doesn't allow serotonin to be produced enough, and that's the feel good one. It isn't a matter of, well, I'm just being very realistic, right? But in those of us in metaphysics and physics, we talk about we can create our own reality, etc. But a lot of people need practical understanding of what actually happens to the mind body. And Dr. Candace Pert wrote a book, Many, and the Molecules of Emotions, where she proved the chemistry of tears shed in joy are very different chemistry than the tears shed in anger or sorrow. They're all
Really?
different. Yes. And so is every level of every anger from total rage to, just saying I'm angry.
Huh.
There's a different chemistry for everything we experience. And it happens instant. So we can change the chemistry. Many years ago, a wonderful woman was going for a PhD in nursing, and she needed three research people,
Hmm.
people who had miracles. And so she asked, uh, and she saw me for a year. She would come up for a full day every month. And it was because I got off of being given 8 hours to live. Uh, and I was so angry at the three physicians who thought they knew everything that that's what cleaned out my body.
Mm.
As I lay dying, my anger flushed it all. So sometimes anger is very effective. I remember looking at them and thinking, oh my God, what do you think I am? Organs hanging in the air? Never forget that image. They were all arguing about different organs and what. And I'm thinking, wow, you have no idea who this person is. You just know nothing. and,
Mm.
and it was wonderful because I signed myself out 72 hours later, refused permission to treat, threw out 11 pharmaceuticals down the toilet when I got home, and took care of my baby and never looked back. and became all organic almost overnight.
Wow.
I was 25.
And
Yeah,
you've been doing that ever since.
yeah, ever since.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's important that we know what a strong will can do. And if, for instance, if your husband is strong willed in any way, that adds the power to what he thinks,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's true of all of us. So, what do you want to add power to?
You want to add power to thoughts and make them positive.
Sure, right. That's a choice. There are patterns, and patterns are not easy to change, but they're worth changing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but nobody can tell anybody to change.
No,
So,
you can suggest it and try and guide them, but they have to do and make that choice themselves
right.
for it to happen.
Yeah.
So you formed the first parapsychology unit in Yale University.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. With
Can you
Dr. Edith
explain
Yerker.
what that was all about?
Okay. So, Dr. Edith Yerker, this goes back to, um, she came as a client, stayed as one of my closest friends. She was um, a psychiatrist who loved parapsychology. She had traveled the world. Uri Geller, and many can look him up. He's still around, probably.
Mhm.
Urigeller, was brought to this country by Andrea Puharich, who lived in Ossining. Edith lived in Croton on Hudson. I lived in Croton on Hudson. Then I moved to Peekskill. She came as a student of mine, and I went, "Why do you believe so?" And so she introduced me to Andrea and Puharich, and he invited me to his class, and then Marcel Vogel, and I played with all of them. And I was in what we call the Faraday cage he had, and just a lot of wild experiences at that point. Well, one of the things was Edith was the treasurer or secretary for the alumni at Yale University. And they asked her to put on an event. And she said, I want a parapsychology event. They said, okay, whatever you want. And so she sat down with me and we designed it. And then she found out she couldn't invite me. And she said, that was awful. I said, no, go have fun with it. We did our part. Now you do your part. That was it. Yeah.
You were not able to go?
No, but her brother was the president of the New York Dental Association. He was the president of the board of governors of it, and they hosted annual meetings, conferences at West Point. And he asked me to be their speaker
Uh-huh.
and run a workshop. I said, "Do you want me to do what?" He said, "I want you to run a workshop for all of us." I said, "In what?" He said, "What you do." He was also a student of mine. And I went, "Okay." And you know what? I had put cards, business cards, and people can play with this at home. I prepared business cards of, I think it was 20 people at the Board of Governors, 20 envelopes, 20 business cards of people I knew personally that I could answer about. And I made sure the envelopes you could not see through and they could not open them. I sealed it. And I knew what was in each one and they could look at it afterwards. But they were to write down everything they felt as they held it after I just guided them in a quieting down, nothing else. And I said, whatever you experience, physically, emotionally, mentally, visual, spiritually, I don't care what, just write it all down. They were like a dart.
Wow.
Right. And I'm going, really? One of them, one of my friends was a veterinarian and it had a picture of a little dog and he said, I see a kind of a doctor. Oh, well, I see a dog and the doctor must be a veterinarian. I mean, that good at what they were doing. And I
Mm.
realized it was because, and they were shocked. And I said, well, the other people who I've ever seen very good like that right away, unless you practice enough or just have it, are the blind.
Mm.
Right. They screen
This
out
is,
everything else. Very
yeah,
focused. So the more focused you are in your work,
makes sense.
the more focused you can be like a laser beam in details. And I think nursing taught me that. I think a lot of my success in what I do when I am successful is because of nursing career and the teachers and the patients and yeah.
Well, we all led to do things in our lives that help us on our journey. So I'm sure that that was purpose.
Yeah. Well, the
How
purpose.
easy is it to find a missing item?
Okay, so one of my students, I teach a lot of mentoring now. I mentor a lot of them, and I have workshops, and I'm going to finally do an in-person retreat. I'm so happy in the spring. So one of them who read my book because I do the missing items in the book. Um, when I talk about missing children or whatever, uh, I have exercises after every chapter to help people sharpen it. So the missing items, I began early in life. When I first started teaching psychic work, I charged $10 an hour. That was 1975, and $10 for class. And I said, no, no, don't give me the money. Uh, I'll when I have to step out or go to the bathroom, I want you to hide the money somewhere,
Okay.
and then I would have to find it.
Oh.
So I set myself up for that many times, and that comes from childhood. My father loved puzzles. I love puzzles of any kind, metal ones and anything puzzle, mysteries. Loved it. And so I created my own about missing items. And so my family and friends would say, I can't find this. And I go, it's in a little blue pouch in a drawer on the right. Do you have an upstairs? I didn't even know where they lived. Yeah. Go to the right. Is there a green carpet? Yeah. Okay, that room. Go look. You never really looked well. Because a lot of people, when you're afraid, you don't really see. You go
You
right
become
past it.
frantic.
Yeah, frantic. So
Hmm.
one of the things I tell people for missing items, chill out, go do something else. You know how it's the last place you'll ever look? It's because you were not in your full mind body when you put it down, unless it was stolen. And
I
I
must
just,
be good at that because I'm good at finding missing items. I
yeah,
do calm myself down and say, I usually ask somebody to help me find it. Guardian angel, help me locate this, please. And then I stop and do something else, and then I eventually end up remembering where it is or finding it.
right. You also have a clear enough internal vision that you can run that movie and see the right. And that helps a lot. But finding things that are not yours requires you to jump and make a leap into try it. What's the harm,
True.
right? And nobody knows until you do it whether you can do it. So one of the women did this as I asked her to. I think she had either her kids hide things from her or something. And she said it was so much fun and it's so wild. But I look at that part of it as electromagnetic activity. You're a magnet. And if you focus on one thing and don't get cluttered in your mind, that one thing you're a magnet to, and you will gravitate towards it, whether it's in your mind as a vision where it is or finding it somewhere else. It, it's something I've always looked to do about anything. So when I needed an art book, because I decided I had time, 10 o'clock at night, and I wasn't tired, I'd need to do something and learn something. So art it was. It was 1984, I think. And so I went to Barnes and Nobles and I put myself in a magnet state of thought, just art book. That's all it was. Thousands of books all around. Nope.
Okay.
I only had a vision for an art. So I went to the art place and there were like three um, aisles. And I went to the second one. That felt better. I walked down halfway, didn't look at the books, put my hand out and pulled out a book. And it was called Drawing with the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. And I opened it up and she's thanking a man named Ronald Meyerson. And I'm going, oh my God, this is my book then.
Mm.
Ronald Meyerson was my first husband's boss in the research faculty at a laboratory in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where we
Ah,
lived. And Meyerson, I went diving with him and scuba diving. And I went, okay, Betty, you got me. Because they did split brain studies. That's where I learned when I needed help, when I was paralyzed, I learned how to heal myself through my vision.
mm,
And it was because I had seen some things in the split brain studies that triggered a better understanding of how focused I have to be.
mm. That's amazing.
Mm, no, life is bumps in the road. Just have to
Yeah,
learn how to navigate them.
yeah,
It is navigating. Yeah,
I do believe that.
yeah.
And you talk to animals too.
I think a lot of people do. I really, you know, when you love a pet, and then they're not a pet to me, they're really companions. They're
Yes, members of
just
the family.
either they may have feathers, they may have fur, they may have scales. They're our companions. And they have their own method of communication, and so do we. But we have a translator, and so do they. Because you can teach a dog from any language, sign language for hands, right? Or
Mhm.
verbal, and most of them will know what you're talking about. So they have a translator, we have a translator, better than Google. Yeah. And so because of that, we make an assumption. That's how I began, making an assumption that what I'm hearing is true. And then
So
like, yeah,
you hear them talking to you and you believe you're just receiving a message and believing that it's true. Am I understanding that?
uh, each one's different, like working with people. I receive differently. So there was a fun one. Uh, the little part of me gets a little Brooklyn. I was in the paddocks after a race. The owners of some race horses were my friends, and I always told them, come on. But I would do anything for the horses, and they knew it, and that would be fine. So one of them called me in because the horse had an issue. And I go, and there were a lot of horses, and there were jockeys there from the race and whatever else. And one jockey was the top jockey at that time, was very annoyed. Oh, you think you know everything. I said, no, I'm just telling what I see. He said, well, come with me. I was finished with the others. I said, okay. So I go over, and there's this beautiful horse. Oh, she was beautiful. And I just close my eyes and send love and wait until I feel my soul embracing her soul. And if she's ready, she will share with me whatever she wants. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I got images of France, Paris, and France. And I'm thinking, wow. So I turned to him and I said, I can't read her. She speaks French. And he said, how did you know she's from France? That's my Brooklyn.
No, that's so
I
funny.
was annoyed at his arrogance, but he
Right.
turned out to be a good friend. After that, he
Isn't
said,
that funny?
he asked me about that. He said, tell me how you got that. I said, it's a little involved, but she's very lonely and she's sad and
Oh,
she needs a friend and a goat would do her well. He said, okay, I'll get her a goat.
a
Or the
goat?
owners will. Yeah, they love goats.
Really?
Oh my God, they love goats and dogs and cats. They love all of them. They're
Oh,
lonely. Even
yeah.
those who live in a stall on a pleasure farm, they want friends.
Mm-hmm.
They don't all want horse friends. You know how some people don't like people? Well, some horses don't like horses.
Oh,
You know? And some of them do better with a different species as a friend. And some of them are not allowed in racing. I don't know if they're even allowed to be near each other. I have no clue because I don't know anything about it, nor do I care to. But I went out for lunch with the jockey and told him everything about how I got that and what I felt. And he was fascinated and he was very sweet. Turned out he left his ego behind. He was curious. And that was wonderful. I was happy to see that in him because he was such a good jockey.
And he got her a go.
I guess. I didn't hang out and find out, but
Well, he
they
said
did.
he was going to, so I kind of hope he did.
Yeah, well, a lot of them did. The owners understood the importance of that, um, of making them comfortable. Even though it's a very different world than the world I live in about animals. We have
Hmm.
wildlife outside our door, and I love my chipmunk who sits on my lap, and after he's been gone a year or so, because he was old, then the next one, there's always some chipmunk who just wants to be your best friend. There are always
Aw.
squirrels who want to be your best friend and sit on your shoulder and where's my next anything? Come on,
Well,
give
I
it to me.
haven't gotten him to come to me because my dogs would chase him away, but the chipmunks and the squirrels know
Oh,
that I love them and I feed them.
that's funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't explain to the companion animal that, look, why don't you get along with every species? Well, I don't feel like it.
They
Happens.
like to chase them.
Yeah. I had four cats when we rescued a mourning dove baby, and they loved her. She slept on one of them. They protected her outside. It was hysterical.
Oh,
Yeah, it was really wild to see how true it is. You see all those stories now, on social media and wherever
yeah.
else, where they all help each other. They rescue humans, they do all kinds of things. Well, sure, they've been doing that forever. They don't go to war with us.
Yeah. No, the humans are usually the ones
Yep.
that hurt them and cool.
Well, territorial, and animals can be territorial, but they can also be best friends with other things and recognize when somebody's hurt or something is hurt. I think that their empathy is strong in them and their compassion is strong. But if you had two blue jays going after the same peanut, watch out.
Very true.
But right, but on the other hand, they'll all tell each other, "Hey, the food's on the floor there. Just I'm getting the first one, so get out of my way." And I watch what they do because I can call them and they suddenly the tree is filled with blue jays, and I tell them the one on the lower branch, this is for him, so or her, whoever you may be. And so I don't know if it's all true because I'm not proving it out, but if you do it often enough, you become familiar with getting some form of feedback that indicates there's a connection.
Okay. I'll definitely want to find out with animals for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really important to start off with a bit of magic, of assumption that all things are possible. Let's go for the best and let's see what we get. And we stay with it and we practice. So sometimes it happens easily and sometimes it takes a while. But I believe we all have multiple gifts of soul and spirit. And until we apply them, we don't know.
This importance of trusting and following your feelings and
Hmm.
trusting your gut, your first impressions. Do you believe that's spirit guide giving us answers, or is that coming from our own personal soul?
Actually, I think it's different for everybody. I don't think there's one answer. I was on a retreat because I was a part of a core faculty for a place called Interweave that used to be in, uh, in Morris County or in Summit in New Jersey. And we were on a retreat, and there was a Sufi master, a goddess worshiper. Uh, Robert Morris, was the founder. He had run the church and then stepped out to do this Interweave. And, uh, and they were all talking about how they got their information, their spiritual purpose, their information as it came through. And each one had a place they went to in their, or a being that they spoke with or whatever. And I said, no, I don't. I was shown the first 3 years I did my work by the man who was with me. that you go direct. And so Robert, I never forget, he said to me, "You didn't need to go to anybody. You're going direct for the source."
Hmm.
And I think, well, the soul takes the source direct anyhow. And if you're getting anything from anywhere else, that's fine too. I mean, there's no one way. You just went off completely. Hmm.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You went off.
I lost you for a second. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's funny. So I don't think there's one answer. I'm really against the idea that there's only one answer on anything. I've heard people say, my near death experience taught me that this is what happens for everybody. And I'm thinking, no, I had a near death experience. Mine was different than yours. So is that one. And you went off again. Um, you went off again.
That's all right. I'm back again. I don't know what's happening, but
Yeah,
it
because
seems to be like a
sometimes,
poor connection.
yeah, because sometimes your words a little bit get slightly smushed a little bit, like clip, and then it's fine.
Okay.
Welcome to technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, please tell my listeners the names of your books.
The Life of a Psychic Detective. You're off again. I don't know if you can hear. You were off again.
Okay, but just keep, you can keep on talking
Oh,
because
I didn't know. Okay.
I
So
believe
what?
it continues.
Didn't know. Sorry. The Life of a
That's
Psychic
okay.
Detective and All Nature Speaks Conversations with Pets and Wildlife. And they're both available either Amazon, a couple of other places, I'm not sure where. And signed copies are through my own website, which is my name.
Now, the life of the psychic detective, what's that about?
I chose to do a form of partly a little memoir on the cases I worked early on, giving the description, detectives speak in it. And the reason I say memoir is because I want people to know the steps we took and the steps I took and how it impacted. Because we get triggers, when we see things that remind us of other things, we're triggered in how we address them. And then I like helping people learn that you can do anything, just give it a shot. And so after every chapter, I've got exercises for everybody, for their soul, and like missing items, but all kinds based on the stories. And so there are stories that are true that happened. And some of the people, if you want to check out my YouTube channel at Soul Talk with me, you just punch in my name and it'll come up. And George Duker is one of the detectives I worked with on one of the cases in the story of a young girl murdered in Long Valley. And Bill Hughes is the one I worked with, a case that many people in New Jersey still remember. Made national headlines, unfortunately. It was serial murderer, James Kadavich. And that's in the book. And all of them are still my friends.
Oh,
So
that's
40
nice.
years, we're very close. I just did the baby blessing last year for Bill Hughes's granddaughter. And so, yeah, and
Oh,
George and I talk a lot. And uh, all the people I worked with back then, we're still very close. And some of the victims' families, I'm still very close with. And we talk.
oh, that's
Oh,
great.
yeah. Oh, Garth Brooks wrote one of the best songs on it to me, Standing in the Fire. Don't stand outside of it. Get right inside.
Mm,
There's nothing, there's no reality until you are in the present. So whatever it is,
mhm.
it is. And so that book came about because I've attempted to write a few times on it and I thought, oh God, I don't know how to write at all. It was awful. And I put them mainly for clients and they were not well written, but they told the stories. So this one was edited, etc., better. And then All Nature Speaks has a few crime cases in it with animals and also several missing animals in order to show the difference between why one is missing and another is missing. They're different reasons, which is fascinating to me. And then, of course, speaking with our own beloved companions. And I think it's really important. And one of them, the horse, as I talked, I had never met a horse before. A woman named Linda Hepburn saw me in a newspaper article about psychic communicates with animals. As soon as I moved into Jersey, somebody wrote it. And she called, and I had never been near a horse. And that was the first horse I ever worked with, a mare. And he's in my book. And what that taught me,
Oh,
it, the animals are my teachers because they show us a different culture of belonging, you know. And we know that. We know most of them are will do anything and stay loving no matter what. They're in pain. Sometimes they're loving. And so they can be the greatest teachers I've ever met.
I believe that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, you offer private sessions and you do mentor and mediumship as well, correct?
Right. I do mentoring sessions a lot, and that means that the clients have a little wait sometimes because I don't do many per week. I have a lot of different projects. I also am a certified clinical aromatherapy therapist, and I teach, and I run a health freedom church, and I run ordination programs for people to be ministers,
You're a
and I run.
multitasker.
I love all of it. I
That's
create
great.
certification programs, and I love it. It's all fun. It's all for finding out, diving deep within one's soul and finding
Helping others.
what's there, you know. And
Hmm.
creativity, I think it's really important. And I tell everybody listening, if you're probably much younger than I. Um, I'll turn 80 in a few months. I'm
Oh
telling
my
you,
goodness. I
yep,
would have never guessed.
I would. I don't feel it, but I know it. Um, and I think that it's really important to always learn. I don't care what it is, just learn. I
Yes.
learned that one back in the 70s from a great um, Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, the authors. Lynn Schroeder and Sheila Ostrander became friends with me. And all the research showed in binaural music we now have comes from the research in Bulgaria that they brought back. And all of it says, you want longevity? Do you want clarity? Keep the brain alive and how you do that. So I also take supplements to affect microcirculation blood for the brain to improve.
Hmm.
I use essential oils that I know specifically that keep my brain organized. I love it. And every room is diffused with them. So I keep everything clean. The air is purified and blah, 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 blah. So everything is about, do I want to be somebody who can't remember things and can't think straight? I think it's more important than being psychic. I think it is whatever gifts you have inside need to come out. And sometimes, if we get to live long, if we're blessed with another day, we have to make it all count for us and then for the world. That includes all the loved ones, of course. And I'm not sure what else to say at this point. Okay. I'm not quite sure if you want to complete this, and I can't hear you, so I don't know where you want or what you want. No, I am not speaking, so it's all dead air right now. Sorry, but I don't know what you'd like me to say.